Hi, folks. We don't have any new readings for this week, for week 6, but I thought I could backtrack and talk about a theme from last week that I didn't cover on last week's little video, and that is the growth of American cities and urbanization in the late 19th, early 20th centuries. And um, of course, that connects for this class with the environment. American cities after the Civil War basically explode in size. The populations of major American cities, many of them triple between 1860 and 1900. So the populations go up in part from immigration and also from people moving from rural areas to the big cities, mainly to find opportunity with the Industrial Revolution going on, the second Industrial Revolution. There are factory jobs, and so the cities are growing in that way. Um, uh, Besides the populations going up, you also have other developments in terms of urban areas, the density of population in poor neighborhoods, in the places where the tenements were located, goes up dramatically. Poor people can't afford much space, and so they're packed in to these buildings, which typically were cheaply constructed. And in many cases, you might have three families living in the space that really was intended originally for a single family. And so that kind of density of population we connect with things like mortality and disease. The number one killer in the 19th century is tuberculosis, and that's a respiratory disease that's spread by people breathing. And when you pack poor people with poor diets together and bad sanitation, the result is people are dying of TB, and there's no antibiotics. People don't know what causes it. So that's a consequence of explosive urban growth. Cities also grow vertically in the 19th century with mass production of steel girders. You can build the skeletons of the first skyscrapers, and so the cities are moving upward. Um, and that upward movement, probably has less direct effect on environment, except for the effects of manufacturing all that steel. Obviously, go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a steel town, and the soot and pollution associated with the steel industry is massive. The Ohio River at Pittsburgh was so filled with contaminants that people say it would catch fire, that if you took a match, you could literally light the surface of the water. So that kind of heavy industry is part of the story of environmental damage in the 19th century. Another factor that's associated with explosive growth of cities is the lack of urban planning. And we still really have that problem today in the United States. America's cities are not necessarily planned in terms of their growth, and that leads to consequences like out in the West, building entire new neighborhoods in Las Vegas where there's not additional fresh water for people to be there. So that's a problem now that legislatures and governments are grappling with is, do we allow cities to continue to grow in a manner that's not sustainable? Then you have the growth of cities outward, and the old colonial walking cities were fairly small. If you visit a city like Boston, originally Boston was a city that you could literally a person could walk all around Boston and easily get to kind of all the locations that in a day you would want to visit. Your shopping and church and the place that you live, and it's fairly compact in terms of geographic space. In the late 19th century, streetcar lines are built radiating out from the center of old Boston, and the entire region is basically transformed. If you look at maps of colonial Boston, it was almost an island just connected by a little neck of land to the mainland. And today, areas that used to be underwater, the old Back Bay, were filled in. And so literally the entire landscape is changed by human activity, with destruction for all the marine life that lived in those bays and inlets. That's all gone today. So lack of urban planning also results in uh, massive pollution of water due to sewage. Populations generate massive amounts of uh, contaminated, water, and cities did not have modern sewage systems to clean that water, and so contaminated water leads to cholera, um, typhoid fever, and waterborne illnesses like that. So that affects people again, and animals actually. So uh, uh, America's cities continue to grow outward today. And if you look at Chicago, Houston, Kansas City, many of them now have not just one kind of ring road of interstate highway, but they're growing additional rings because the city limits and the suburbs keep moving outward. And when that happens, you're covering agricultural land, basically, or natural land. You're paving it, you're putting it under buildings and parking lots and things like that. And so um, the United States has been a society that has not really recycled very effectively. The old cores of downtowns are often allowed to become run down, and we just keep building out at the edges. And that creates environmental problems as well. So, hope you've been having a good week 6, and I will talk to you folks later.